Hello and welcome to This Week on Planet Earth. I'm your co-host Jacob.
And I'm your co-host Matty, where each week we break down the latest space exploration, science and technology related news.
So without further ado, let's get into this week's stories. So our first story of the week is a segment from CNN News, and they're basically talking about how long is the solar system's longest day. And they're basically saying Venus has the answer. So it says here by the Reuters, data obtained by bouncing radio waves off Venus, treating it, as scientists say, a giant disco ball, is providing a new insight into Earth's closest planetary neighbor, including a precise calculation of the duration of the Venusian day. The study also measured the tilt of the Venusian axis and the size of the planet's core, allowing for a deeper understanding and enigmatic world, sometimes called Earth's evil twin. It's already known that Venus has the longest day, the time the planet takes for the single rotation of its axis of any planet in our solar system. Through there were discrepancies among previous estimates. Okay, so they're basically saying that a new study has found that the Venusian rotation takes around 243.0226 Earth days, which means that a day lasts around longer than 1 year on Venus, which makes a complete orbit around the sun in around 225 Earth days. The research transmitted by radio waves towards Venus 23 times from 2006 to 2020 from NASA's Goldstone antenna in the Mojave Desert of California, and the study radios echoed, which provided information on certain planetary traits as Goldstone and the Greenback Observatory in Virginia. So basically they're just saying that they've got a more accurate way now of being able to figure out planetary rotations by bouncing radio signals off it, and they've managed to narrow the Earth date down to almost 4 decimal points, which is kind of interesting. If we move on to the second story. So our second story for the week, we've got Jeff Bezos's rocket company Blue Origin has challenged NASA over the SpaceX Moonlander detail. So if you've been keeping up with the Artemis program missions, you'll have seen that SpaceX, Dynamics, and Blue Origin have been awarded some deals with NASA to work on the Artemis project. But as of when this was announced, which was on April the 30th, it was announced that Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, two of the richest men, were both leading in these humanity projects with NASA for Artemis. And on Monday, it was announced that Blue Origin, the rocket company founded by Bezos, filed a 50-page protest with the federal government challenging the $2.9 billion contract that they awarded to SpaceX to build a lander for the American astronauts to return to the moon. They're basically saying that NASA previously announced earlier that month that it was all going to be going to SpaceX now after beating Blue Origin, which were originally going to be one of the 3 companies that were taking up this project. So it'll be interesting to see where that one goes. I'm not really sure if he's got a leg to stand on, because I'm guessing it really is up to NASA on who gets to work with them or not. But it will be interesting to see going forward, because I can imagine that Blue Origin probably would have paid for probably some specific parts or some specific things being done to their rockets by certain deadlines to make it achievable for them to be awarded the contract. So if they were awarded it and they're no longer awarded it now, it's understandable. But it's funny seeing 2 of the world's richest men having a bit of fun with each other. I did see on social media that Elon Musk was making a bit of a joke about this on Twitter. I think he put at Jeff Bezos, can't get it up, and then in brackets, to orbit, lol. So even the rich have a bit of fun, I guess.
Yeah, so my first bit of news, the next piece was a piece in Reuters, and this was about the UK government giving the green light for self-driving in apostrophes cars on motorways. So they basically say the UK government has become the first country to announce it will regulate the use of self-driving vehicles at slow speeds on motorways, and they're going to start with automated lane keeping systems. So cars that use sensors and software to keep the cars within the lane, and then they can accelerate and brake without the driver input. So yeah, it seemed like quite a promising bit of news on the face of it, but then go down a bit further in the article, it says the government has said these systems will be restricted to motorways at speeds under 37 miles per hour, which is, I didn't even think you could drive that slow on motorway.
Yeah, that's pretty slow.
So I'm not sure what they're really planning to do with this, but it seems like a very small, good first step. They talk about how this has the ability to create up to 38,000 new skilled jobs, and they're hoping that the UK will become an early adopter of this self-driving technology, and how it's legislated and legally allowed to work on the roads. And then my second piece of news was about the Chinese rocket, which perhaps when this goes out on Saturday will already have deorbited, but is currently set to undergo an uncontrolled re-entry at some point back into the Earth's atmosphere. So this was the rocket that launched part of the new Chinese space station last week. It launched a 22.5 metric ton T-shaped module for the space station. It forms the first part of the new Chinese space station. It's going to be quite a bit smaller than the International Space Station, but they've got plans to run up to, well, there's 50 locations on it that they can do external space experiments. So obviously good news for China, but the rocket which they used to launch this this module has been left to crash and burn uncontrolled. So that's going to be deorbiting at some point, and I've seen updates today that NASA are still tracking that and trying to figure out where it might land. So who knows?
It's never good.
So yeah, that was the sort of news in brief. So did you want to talk about the bit of news that you wanted to discuss more?
Yeah, so I'll move on to my main news story of the week, which is Ingenuity's fourth hop. So as of now, we're on our fourth hop of the little helicopter that we've got on Mars that was transported there by the Perseverance rover. If I'm correct, I think the first little hop / flight was just a little hover from the ground. And then the second one was 2 little hovers from the ground. And I think the third one was a hover from the ground, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, and then back on the ground. And then now it's being reported that Ingenuity, at first, it failed its fourth flight, but then earlier on Friday, it managed to do it. And they're now confirming that its fourth flight was successful, and it's no longer just a technology demonstration, and it'll get 1 extra flight on the Red Planet as an operations demonstration. They're saying that the Ingenuity rod to Mars attached to the belly of the Perseverance rover, which is the preliminary robot explorer for this mission, Ingenuity, was added as a technology demonstration, as mentioned above, and the team doesn't expect for it to survive its first winter on Mars. You've been obviously hearing quite a lot about it recently because they've been trying to get it to go, but I just find it so interesting that we've managed to actually build and create something that we've transported to another planet, coded up, that works, and we are able to physically fly from another planet with a 12-minute delay. It's just absolutely baffling. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And this fourth flight in particular, it says in this article, wow, it's about 2 minutes worth of flying that it did.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy for something that's, it said, hundreds of thousands of miles away.
Yeah, as I was going to say, it says here, so the fourth flight went exactly to plan. It remained airborne for 117 seconds and covered 266 meters, which is just absolutely crazy. NASA now says Ingenuity is working so well that it's transitioning to an operational demonstration mission, which is cool. That means we're gonna be using it more so for things now instead of just seeing if we can fly it on the surface of another planet. They've said that Perseverance will adjust the start of its mission to continue supporting the helicopter, which has rapidly become the star of the show and was initially slated for a month of flight operations before Perseverance moved on, but now it could continue to fly through later in the summer. And it was saying that it was designed with an off-shelf bit of hardware. So I think they used a Snapdragon 801, which is a smartphone processor, just to give you an idea of the computing capability on it. So it doesn't have any bulky communication equipment to reach Earth. So that's what it relies on with the Perseverance Zigbee wireless communication standard, and that's why it takes its time to get back to Earth as long with its distances. But yeah, that's my main bit of news this week. I thought it was very interesting. If you're a follower of the podcast, the Infinite Void podcast, you'll know that me and Matty have been going on about this helicopter for what sounds like weeks, if not months now. So it's very awesome that they're actually turning it into a bit more of a actual mission now, not just a test.
Yeah, it's looking promising, and yeah, it does look awesome. So, yeah, my final bit of news, my in-depth piece of news was about electric vehicles, and a city in, I think it's the Netherlands, Utrecht becomes the first bi-directional region in the world. So this is talking about their electrical grid, and basically the city have formed a collaboration with Hyundai and We Drive Solar to make this bi-directional electric grid. So basically the idea is, it explains in this article, that your vehicle will be able to take electricity from the grid when you're charging it, sort of 3-4 o'clock in the morning when electrical demand is low. But then when it's plugged in the evening, it will be able to give electricity back to the grid and act like a battery to sort of try and
oh, that's cool.
Sort of stem some of the busier times in the evening when people are doing stuff. So it's really interesting, and this is something that I've been sort of following in quite a while. That obviously has a problem with. No, it's not a problem. It's an inherent sort of factor that you have to consider with things like wind and solar. That sometimes the wind isn't blowing and it's cloudy.
Yeah.
And what happens when lots of those sorts of renewable energies sort of start to slow down? And what they're hoping for is that if we're all driving around these vehicles with loads of batteries in them, why not use those and sort of borrow some electricity from them to try and get through those busier periods? And traditionally, those sort of busy periods are managed by having sort of base load of nuclear and even sort of fossil fuel and coal power stations. So it's promising, and it's really interesting. And I know in our podcast, in one of our episodes, I sort of talked about these sort of microgrids and trying to make a more a smarter sort of electrical grid. So this is really interesting, and I'm going to be following it a lot more closely over the coming months and years.
Yeah, no, that sounds really, really cool. We'll have to keep an eye out on it and see how they do with it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all of the news for this week on Planet Earth. If you've enjoyed the new show and the new concept, the new idea, make sure you give this video a like and you subscribe to the channel. We're going to be doing a new episode every Saturday. If you're also interested in the podcast, you can check out the Infinite Void podcast, which is also available on YouTube, as well as audio versions on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. You can find This Week on Planet Earth on social media by Googling the handle @Twope News on both Instagram and Twitter, if you want to keep up to date with that. And you can also give the podcast a follow at Infinite Void Pod on Twitter and Instagram as well. I've been your co-host, Jacob, and that has been your co-host, Matty. We look forward to seeing you next week, and we will catch you then.